Hello, America. Hello, YouTubers. I forgot the name of this video. But it's all these things. I was one of the people in the Ninth Circuit Court next to the World Trade Center towers. Leading up to the attack, in that context and since, there were names that had been rolled with others from off all the campuses I went who influenced names by influencing. This is every campus you went to. Sickly distinctly, to keep without even fathoming even those roles with it who know the most about it, how sickly non-distinctly. And the only way they know about that is because since before they took oaths, before they realized or don't realize criminally foreign influence, fact-checking nature quality aspects in nature of black pupils. I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a police force, I'm not a criminal. The news media and their sources, they are recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. They'll pretend others simultaneously. Switch names, forging, use wire crime methods, mail crime methods, self-value. Pretending they can't believe it. But in other words, they're preventing us from speaking as individuals. And they're telling us we could only sue as individuals. They have the nature of lawyers and the natures of types of lawyers. And they have the rules with location /S. Originally, still, our founders left us not to leave out how overt criminal enterprises, private ones, the branches of government, the difference of that, the intelligence, that had all been sustained, used remotely, northern colonies, southern colonies, and northern states, southern states, because we're still entrenched roles with that torture, extortion, slavery method, and use roles with use /S of syntax, manifest, phenomena, generating from the singular phenomenon of that singular breaching method, and or of what we should call a hyper-archetypal criminal enterprise. Even if it is just that method in nature of roles with it, where it is unity. See, suits and ties counters and exceptions still as collusions as one array, as one system of humanity's voicing. Still tactical ulterior from that native system, that hyper native system that shows us the increasing value of the difference of Native Americans individually grouped in together as ourselves, sickly distinctly hurt by this breaching method that has assigned all natural differences other than hyper-native. Demonstration /S, it means to appreciate that. Religion buck, because you have stayed contained. And many trained for what? Iowa. Not as by these means that we actually have. See, there is a system that we know could lead us, because if we could discern anyone leaving out the smallest finite detail, you left out a whole bunch of finite details regarding the significance of how to interpret what causes and caused negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures at New York City, let alone at the 13 counter extorted positions within more than 13 colonies, forced to become a country not alone, not realizing simultaneously two sides. North and South still had roles with slavery, sickly distinctly no. The possessions, as England, as a modern country, they don't even remember the history of English. Because this is what, for example, in the video I just did regarding the Vladimir Putin interview, and the with Tucker Carlson. And note this is new because of this game here and there, suits and ties, counters as collusions, with exceptions too, per worse, that everyone missed since ancient times. We could discern this with readings of and defenses of the sciences, with summaries of them, and where and how that is used, and actually valued. See, because no longer can it be afforded, increasingly no longer can it be afforded by systems individually grouped and together as one, where everyone's unity and agreeing. With its state tactical ulterior for the one that is one because it's the identity of everything at once. While it is that portion not everything at once. While it is that portion that is anyway. The value of that, all three of those are equally increasing. The value, the identity of three identities of zero is only increasing. And their value is only increasing. And that generated its physical identity. And it was and is its identity, physical while not, but anyway. Your identity years ago, it is not your identity. Even the cells are new cells. Reportedly, in other words, in other words, but it is anyway. In other words, even the bugs have consciousness. But we have been systems tactical ulterior from what could just afford value, the value of our innumerable rights. Too many to list. I believe it's the 9th Amendment. And we were supposed to get the Constitution unabridged. And demonstrably, we were supposed to have afforded to us a quality of fact should be nature that we have been offensively prevented. In a nature of debate that we have that has offensively prevented civility under the guise of being for civility or justice or order. So we have singular and group definitions of order that have only been tactical ulterior from how nature revealed. The language is in English, for example, before the sciences became criminally foreign influenced to be taught and valuing each other simultaneously because their difference, Black pupils, we have the same colorized, different colorized at the same time. And that can be used to discern the hyper simultaneous, which is additional to being a simultaneous nature as one of the things we could use the hyperscope to observe. It is that which it is being actually true always, not denying. And exceptions are making up regarding how and why there are other species bodies. There are birds, there are bats. The mammals, amphibians, all that. Crustaceans, nations, radio stations. So in other words, also regarding the value of voting, this breaching method set up even if a majority of people, Black pupils, when we do this movie and other with the colors reversed, and to show American history, we're going to focus not on that. We're going to focus on the breaching method. We're going to use the hyper evidential where and how other than the breaching method was his blame, even though that's what our founders communicated for us to blame everything on the breaching method. See, this breaching method knew that modern countries A through Z, knew semi-ancient countries A through Z, would blame other things, would blame others, or would other slash S, or for the what the breaching method caused. And then he knew that it could force, trick, hurt, and persuade them to self-value, doing and having done that as fact treatment nature. As uses of names A through Z, increasingly as systems ulterior from where and how they are employed by nature. That's where religious rights and the difference of the religion not to be played either. When someone says they want religious rights, see, they played that concentrated. We're right where we agree about things. They keep concentrating what we don't agree about, and rightfully, like corruption at mental health care right on top of campuses. Hold patients and criminals and their family members, the people, as ones also of the family members of fire departments, of the other ages and natures of campuses, police chiefs, their people next to them, their neighbors, their family members next to them, in other words. All used remotely, see Sense and Sensibility, phrase of Jane Austen. See how slavery is left out because they have other things, others ourselves were blamed again, besides the breaching method that had been entrenched with slavery entrenched northern states and southern states before our founders were born. That means sustained was use slash S of that in ways that everyone couldn't fathom, juxtaposed with that with the ways they fathom. And there are recorded means to discern how it consciously maintained and keeps maintained. We're right where it's self-value. See, when you're a victim of those crazy laws against everyone sickly distinctly, as everyone had been, we have to understand this, America. We shouldn't have to go back and teach American history. We should have to be able to build on it unobstructed. We should already know the Native Americans, individually grouped in together, are 1/3 of our founders. They are further the portion that, coupled with and as the value of president slash chief, as the value of another third of our founders, and then and those who had to counter extort the other founders at 13 locations, where every single person since semi-ancient times A through Z was forced, tricked, hurt, persuaded to entertain what can't be entertained and afford to be, let alone to protract, short words with convictions proper regarding the revelations that come through understanding and observation of the scientific value of how and why the breaching method as one of the answers to what caused slavery. It is one of the things that constantly caused slavery. See now how racism was blamed all this time, that's used by the breaching method to measure and maintain other things, others, or other, and or selves, blamed for what it caused historically, what it is causing now actively. The suburbs were designed before our founders were even born to cause negative value nature progressions, acts, and nature. The only reason this has been left out with reason, besides the obvious reason, is because of this method of measuring and maintaining through our own, through hyper additional apparent motivations, nature's needs, interests, for criminal insidiousness, uses of truth or of lies. there is such a thing as a criminal insidiousness nature of positive, not really positive. I'm not a lawyer, not a police force, I'm a criminal. The lead up to each of the campuses, you have to, in other words, there is a hyper predicate acts delivery system method /S being and having been maintained effectively from off all location /S everywhere the species body is named A through Z. This method, this hyper archetypal predicate acts delivery system method, forced, tricked, hurt, and persuaded names A through Z without realizing they blamed and are blaming and need to keep people blaming other things, others themselves, even though it hurts them more than anything else, even though they don't realize. Because everyone doesn't realize that all that's contained with your quality of fact-shaping nature, qualities, aspects of fact-shaping nature. In fact-shaping nature itself as criminal insidiousness, differentially worse if legalized criminal insidiousness or if overtly criminally foreign influence. So this breaching method knew that modern countries A through Z and their difference would be used by themselves self-value when arguing to defend their identities as roles with predicate acts with facts way worse than and as collusion /S with the things that some of them deal with formally, where and how originally instilled names in all sides of criminal and civil cases, and the differences of that or of their lawyers putting fake things into records, roles, and or the sources, and or the interbranch forging, switching names. Because this breaching method employed remote uses of the identities, A through Z, of the identities of difference. Therefore, the branches of government as actually how and why manifest. It is revelations come from appreciation of how the hyper invisible but still discernible, such as why and how, what we are appreciating, why and how we need more than one word for the verb to discern and appreciate the verb's identity. Why and how we need more, the individual, grouped, and simultaneous to appreciate the subject. Nature shows us also /S, more subjects, increasingly attached to any we could grapple with, individually grouped or together, finite or as strong as we could be. See, but we could accord /hyper accord with that identity, which takes the nature of contemplation. But this is how pantheism used prayer, tactical ulterior, from the definition /S of prayer, except for where and how counters to the impositions of this contain also decipher what's accords with why and how. Definitions of prayer have been left abridged, but we have been not allowed to appreciate this. For example, beginning with the beginning of the Quran, this is after it says the most important part, the only part that matters, where honesty comes relative to. If you're gonna call the identity of the hyper simultaneous, for example, my transliteration of it, Allah or not, per science, and it says if the person discerns reasons not to pray in any mosque for any reason, they should not. They don't have to. See, but rather than appreciate difference that doesn't leave out the finite, smallest finite detail. Two, the beginning of the Old Testament has the experts and the counters on the Old Testament as used remotely with their difference, whether with the nature of debate is used. Certain type of victim slash hyper victim doesn't know how to react syntactically. And then further as names used slash S already. Sequence used. Predicate acts with facts rules. Before they took oaths. No. Then the styles forced by nature. Increasingly shown by the breaching method while having been used remotely. As all locations slash as difference, all formal differences at all locations slash S. I taught best boxing. I teach us things because I stay led by what is true always. I stay led by how there are 5 distinct identities of order. And there is one that has them simultaneously valued. Like you don't leave out the value of sequence first. And with questions, and with the nature of questions. On a mass scale, Republican themed, the Democratic themed minds as prosecutors and judges, as lawyers, as citizens A through Z, that have been stayed effective collusions for that method which originally and still uses increasingly self-value, where it keeps collusions with itself, is where and how the differences include between overt criminal enterprises, private ones, the criminal insidiousness as the inherent to, active to, and progressive to quality of fact human nature, aspects of fact human nature, with people A through Z. Again, or that body is sensed, even if that body is a majority of people, black pupils. This color game was set up by black-white, semi-ancient, which now referred to as ancient, transnational, legal bodies, and overt criminal enterprises and private ones that knew they were going to get caught together. For whatever reason, when they adapted, this is more probable anyway, they adapted by forcing, tricking, hurting, and persuading consciously names A through Z of the human species body by first using their surface names and needs to use those, like America now, like Russia now, like China, like India. Value is greater than, is more finite than is active identity of relativity. To value then can be afforded discerned by people who have logic regarding, there's all kinds of social security scams with mental health care, where they've been stealing thousands of dollars a day. Families with Hartford Hospital, ones with badges, ones with gavels, and their family members planting evidences at crime scenes, putting faked evidences in databases, planting evidences on all sides of everyone. And with people from other sides of towns, because then they're hiding live progression because they've been used remotely originally still. Forgiveness is to use where everyone's collusion with the breaching method, black pupils. Forgiveness is to allow here justice, freedom, and mandated law to defend the individual and not to keep why and how the individual's never depended on, blamed on the things others themselves. And how even especially differentially if using exceptions to get away with it, using exceptions, tactical terror from how nature does, which is the ways we know. But again, it is itself as the value of what came first. And as that increasing value, it is what shows us more and more means to discern the only increasing value of the difference of Native Americans, because the difference of hyper native is essential. Individual group difference slash S and species volume is no gain. Who'll not stay these all other tray to help and spend some get mandated law. I can show you. They have names between the campuses that are sense and sensibilities, to use Jane Austen's phrase, and that are being and haven't been used to repeat fake things, and also all exceptions, exception nature, used influence to use that from off their locations. Where and how, there are means to discern how victims A through Z have stayed, again, blaming other things other than themselves for why and how. We have black pupils and whites of eyes to answer our questions. We have the same color eyes and different color eyes at the same time to answer our questions. Slavery, a human fact, human nature breaching method caused slavery. What caused our founders to be blamed for it? Criminally foreign influence readings of history and of evidence and of research of reality, and per the nature of debate, how this is stayed. And he prayed. So they have hid from Americans what our founders, with James Madison, got George Washington to agree with to become our first president. Not our first founder, our first president. That's and our first founder too. But that's also as roles with Native Americans as our founders. But that's also where and how everyone had to hide their actual motivations, and with the syntax where and how they just dropped off. They created out of nowhere 13 counter extorted and counter and forced to move for freedom. Roles already entrenched and only allowed fathomable with a torture, extortion, slavery method. All exceptions were effectively used to measure and maintain. Assignments of identities differences, like the differences of the adults or the kids of branches of government, where and how they pretended that was integrity or needs to pretend they have integrity where they don't. And that was his assignment as one of the things hyper-evidence recorded, having been used to screen where and how not other than other things than the breaching method have stayed blamed. And while our founders communicated for us to blame things like the breaching method, to blame those things on the breaching method, on things like the breaching method, like more so than on race. Racism was ended by the breaching method. To blame it on racism, knowing it's the breaching method, as nature shows, and to play its game with difference. They can't defend that and afford to be, let alone to protract, as they actually were and are. The syntax of people at each age and location and with instance, and or with the value of what came first. So increasingly, I minded my own business. People will tell you, I never had problems with anyone. But everyone liked me. I was pleasant. I like them. In other words, when we're growing up, I mind my own business. I never find anyone. There are people increasingly connected who pretended other with passions and emotions too, and use corners of buildings and corners of streets. And they're hiding behind their own. They never had legitimate roles with anything. And then they hide behind their service. Oh, they hide behind uses of their names. One of the things you're going to experience as a black actor acting white in the colonial is you're going to experience, and you're not going to like it then and now too, how you're not allowed to use, how we have this hyperscope, having the same color eyes, different color eyes at the same time, knowing we're the same species body, but we have had this and have had sustained against it a breaching method uses of the differences of it. But we haven't had that used with the revelations, that nature of truth that is not being used for lies, not valuing others is being using it for lies, not being used to high sequence value. You cannot understand American history if you don't understand, or Russian history, or Chinese history, if you don't understand how since semi-ancient times, roles using the names of the sciences, roles using the names of the human volume sciences difference /s, individual, of species individual, and group differences. These are 3 volume sciences as the same one. Just like we're in house cell, nuclear cell, body cell, wall /s. And appreciation further of gases and their mixture. And water and its elements, its mixture, positive or negative, to what makes more of its body, more and more of its forever nature, through temporary / lasting forever nature. This is what nature shows us to communicate. Mental health care at countries A through Z. These are names that are criminally foreign influence and tactically delusions wrought scientifically and with the acceptations of the religions as the reason experts tell. So there's a problem. Then to cover this up, they've been putting fake transcripts with people because then they've been pretending others to have delusions. They can't discern where the delusion is. So they're faking conversations to do such. I'm going to show you what a delusion is. First, you have to be able to discern what the ancient snow people are in demonstration of, which is these 5 identities of sequence / simultaneous nature. Left to right and right to left distinctly as itself. And so it is positive, negative, or question mark. The left to right finite, positive, negative, or question mark, and question mark. As left to right, the first plus symbol on the ancient snow people. It's on my YouTube channel banner. The middle one, this is the grouped. So that's the order of the finite, left to right. The middle one is grouped and active. The same thing, plus, negative, or question mark. And the third one is the simultaneous, or the progressive, being the extent of the future that we could discern. Like now it is the winter and the spring is to come. See, but we have not, and we know too, simultaneously there is an identity that we don't know. But we know what that is reality, and we know that is not, we don't know about that. That comes additional. That's that parenthesis right to left around these 3. Plus symbols, automatically temporary plus. And left to right, parenthesis, that's the value of what it was itself. And as its identity of relativity to why we question, no matter what question it is, and the nature of that question. Because it wants that, needs that the same too. Or even like with emotions, for example, it's about for the same reason. For example, in the way emotions, if one's descriptions of their own emotions or of the emotions of others is only to leave out the smallest finite detail or simultaneous details, then other than that hypernative system is being used, and that can be discerned. See, but we have that already being and having been self-valued, having not been discerned. People who have had roles with torture of, extortion of, and slavery at locations A through Z, let alone New York City, where they have building. I tried to draw it, then I see the pictures. Oh my God, I didn't even draw it. New York City was built, designed so with a draw as a drawing, someone couldn't build more designed to cause negative value nature progressions, acts in nature. In other words, for the person describing it. Because one of the things the breaching method uses and used was that and how it employed descriptions of what it caused, what it causes, what keeps and maintains the calm, self-value. How keeps that blame on other things, others, or selves. Like with the little rap guy and friends, there's the proverbial devil, and they have a faction that is Shaytun, and they want to be called that now. And they want to have not discerned why they're not supposed to just call it one name. The cipher shows that we're supposed to label a hyper-archetypal criminal enterprise roles with countries A through Z as archetypal criminal enterprises. And we're supposed to have forgiveness to not leave out the hyper-archetypal criminal enterprise, to keep blame focused on that. And how it keeps, is that or roles with keeping blame to other things, others, or selves for the real cause of negative value nature progressions, acts, and nature, which are really nature's demonstrations of things, other too, and of how to cause positive value nature progressions, acts, and nature. That means out of nowhere. Evolution's fruits and gifts means out of nowhere. It doesn't connect with positives that are made out of negatives that are still criminal and ceaseless natures of positives. Black pupils. The suburbs were designed before our founders were born, tactically denatured to cause negative value nature progressions, acts, and nature, and to only allow propagate styles of logic, natures of logic, as people reliant upon food, means, and resources from other locations. Tactical ulterior, how from nature wanted that too. But tactical ulterior, it wants to control everything that the hyper invisible. It wants the hyper invisible, but still discernible to be used to lead all our questions. See, this breaching method knew that at countries A through Z, there will be a certain type of victim / hyper victim, as various natures of judges and prosecutors, per use of location / S and databases. Relativity, no, to people A through Z. Before our founders were born, that was sustained. There are all kinds of proofs of relativity. There are all kinds of proofs. This breaching method knew a certain type of victim / hyper victim. As well would if we didn't, except if we figure out and have realized and have thought to ourselves about how James Madison and the people behind him are our founders. And see president / chief, proof that it's Native American. Even if it's not Native Americans, it's that way because it's individual, grouped, and species volume. And nature showing us that nature is native, hyper native. And any system that's not native is abridged. And we're supposed to get the Constitution unabridged. See, but this employed and sustained uses of names, again, with blaming other things, others, or selves, in defending that as descriptions of law, definitions of law, precedents, and statutes, self-cultivated being and having been propagated criminally foreign influence, tactically criminally foreign influence, slash hyper-tactically. It was by a singular method that came from semi-ancient times. It made the A through Z uses of those tactical terror. That system increasingly blaming other things other than yourselves. Where and how they simultaneously need to do that. Have or value that have being or haven't been done. That's more and more people at formal locations. They need to self-value other locations like campuses A through Z in the difference of that. Used by others hyper-additionally for hyper-additional reasons. Now by accident already projected there too from other locations. Also faked, we're perfectly in collusion with that. In other words, rolls with this. This breaching method showed the difference between the intelligence, the difference, and the three branches of government. The difference at the same time, overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and citizens A through Z. How they need to hide quality aspects in nature regarding their convictions with uses of their passions and emotions, where they appear to have them or not, where they speak for their own or others. They were never taught to speak about the law properly. They were never taught to appreciate what Marbury versus Madison is conjunctive, hyperconjunctive to properly. All appearances of justice, black pupils. They are not here because they are not, justice is not present, but as a criminal insidiousness nature of it. Our country's A through Z. They were shown means and needs. They were backed into to definitions, uses, into tactical delusions, uses, into feelings about that they can't afford to discern. They can't afford to have discerned the function of feelings. They need to pretend what is debatable is not. They need to value the nature of debate being used effectively to contain self-valued roles with those quality aspects in nature of fact-sheet nature, quality aspects in nature, inherent, active, and progressive, associated with the suits and ties counters to them, and exceptions, as the people who could traverse the earth, but yet we have the suburbs with pretended debatable about how they were involved with the extortion of and the tortures of and the fact-sheet nature slavery of our founders at America, at Russia, and at China. Already to defend themselves, they had to value alliances. All tactical terror, just like our own alliances, tactical terror, as systems, tactical terror from how nature employed our words to appreciate individuals of the species volume with group differences too. 3 volume. Individuals, group differences, species volume. We cannot touch the species volume. We cannot accord with its power and might but one way. Many pray, vaccines. It's just things belong since some ancient times. Control our minds. I mean, free our heart, but control our minds. So, mandated law is not followed. Connecticut courts have been in roles with all sides in criminal and civil cases. Increasingly, New Britain Superior Court has people named Mendez since I was a kid. Involved with people also, and Officer Jerry Miller and others named Dylan have been evidences on all sides of my house and all sides of their houses since before they moved into their houses, and they have roles with sale of their houses, criminally foreign influence, with people involved interstate. And the names with officer, three different officers said they had the name McGee. And they're lying about their motivations for how I raised my voice until people would call the police. Because before that, I caught them on off. Also, the spots they forced me to go. Hartford Hospital had people involved with child offenders on my street. They have roles with untimely deaths on off Trinity College. And roles, even if that was made up, because they have roles with planting evidences with news, with people who have right to lie, where they using it where they don't have the right to lie. As roles with remote uses of roles with all sides of criminal and civil cases. As names also roles with wire crime action methods and mail crime action methods in Wethersfield Police, state police families, interstates too. So a whole bunch of people tied to the name Zano and too, and Cololo with WTNH has some fake emails and digital crimes and wire crimes, identity thefts and frauds with a principal child offender more then and now. It's with deans, people tied to deans, influence everyone to hide what came first too, because they're also lying about motivation because there are people from off the campuses involved. Former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, has roles with names at all campuses I went to, tied to the ones tomorrow and Ray Reynolds as the ones and next to that campus where Ray Reynolds was in a class with me when I was in kindergarten for 1 year. I had one conversation with him. And then the next day, and there was no other conversation with him. Wethersfield have roles with more, they're having overt criminal enterprises, private ones, names with the campuses, names with insurance investigations, all kinds of natures of investigators. People with the name Kerr, people with the name Keene, tomorrow, Scalora with the World Trade Center attack for themselves as ones involved with wire crimes in Wethersfield Police through time. They attached me to fake conversations with kids, with police and with doctors as a kid, and now as an adult. And we need to get them on paper with judges too. Did this little tricks with facts and databases. They use Truths for Life like a little magic trick. In other words, all except exception 8, they put in fake exceptions too. Increasingly, fake terms are using investigators remotely. As people on off the campuses, UConn, Quinnipiac, all the universities. Their roles with the difference of the titles. In other words, East Hartford has roles with intelligence locations, with female and male military people, police forms, medical families involved with spot homes next to and temporary homes like apartment and homes next to Central Connecticut State University, next to Trinity College, involved with people from other countries, where they have roles with criminal justice together, where they have roles for psychiatry tied to courts and to campuses, where they're putting fake transcripts on campuses filmed 24/7 too. Former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, and various judges and prosecutors also have roles with federal evidence crimes, like on Covington Street, and roles with sexual circles with child offenders involved with them there, with prosecutors and judges, and male and female military, foreign and domestic. They recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed they have roles with child offenders on off campuses, intercities, with people who are also and have been involved with the corner of Elm Street, the corners of Elm Street and Wethersfield and in Rocky Hill through time. Same names involved with shipping locations and with the conversations with their teachers and other educators that were involved in where they worked. Eric Oliveri recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed his co-workers sought me out to record, confess, demonstrate, confirm. The mobile gas stations have roles with judges and prosecutors, family members, state police family members who have timed roles with overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and people who time where people are in classes and where they're going to walk, so no one's going to know them. And they're going to have exceptions where people are going to say they know them because they walk by and someone uses their name. They're putting fake things in databases this way. Many pray. It's relative to where and how they can only three branches of government easier than they keep them criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions raw. They can't afford to have discerned what really caused the negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures in New York City. They can't afford to have that discerned what really caused them in Weathersfield, Connecticut, tactically denatured, involved with slavery before our founders were born, involved as the last of the 13 counter-extorted locations, north and south, that were used to force Weathersfield/Hartford, used to force rolls against the breaching method. That was and is 3 ways manifest: a torture method, extortion method, fact-cheating nature, slavery method. Therefore, physical slavery method, black pupils, will cause environmental problems. It's not the population, it's the identity of the grounds, the identity relationship to itself. We are a fact-cheating nature where science is involved through the filters of industries and the value treatments to leave out values full course as collusions, with the difference of that or the interbranch still. Ugh. In other words, we have means to the show. In other words, it's still employed by the torture, extortion, slavery method. This breaching method showed them they already blamed other things, others themselves, and how they could do that now. The people who pretend they could speak for integrity or science at New York locations. Any location. Can you leave that out? There's a problem because that's the easiest way to discern. It's easy to discern with the suburbs that were designed with slavery entrenched north and south, tactically denatured before our founders were born, needing resources from other locations now, ways unnatural from how the ways nature shows us the species body needs to be independent. It needs to be simultaneous. It needs to be unity and independence valued simultaneously. And trying to discern that difference. That is always Dancer/S. I tell it best. Boxing's species body longs to shadow box. I teach those things. It's not one that way. Many pray.